Hello and welcome to race 4 of the Super League Triathlon eSports team experiment. It's going outstandingly so far. Our results are getting better and better on Zwift, taking on the classics races on the virtual riding platform. Now, Zwift, if you don't know about it, is an online cycling and running physical training program that users can interact and train and compete in a virtual world. And if they're the very best, well, even if they're not, they can race on there as well. And it's really keeping our athletes and everybody's spirits up during this time of lockdown, giving everybody something to do, something to compete in, and all of your favourite Super League stars are involved. And of course, I'm not talking about Chris McCormack, who does join me very early this morning once again, about 3:30 in the morning or whatever. You're looking fantastic as always, Mackie. You do some of your best work at this time of the day. How are you, mate?
Very, very good. Got my Manchester City jersey on. It's quite cold here in Sydney at this time of morning, but it's good to be back calling events, as you said. I never imagined that we'd be sitting here in late April calling esports bike races that our magnificent athletes are doing. But it's really killed the time, and it's great to see them out competing. And I thought the men's race last week was a big step up from where we were a couple of weeks ago, and how far our athletes have come in learning how this Zwift racing goes. It was remarkable racing.
Yeah, it's been a swift learning curve, if you like, pun intended. And of course, we'll talk about what happened in the men's race in Richmond. It was 4 days ago. We'll talk about that in a second. But the women's race we're looking forward to, and it's only about 20-ish minutes away. We head to Watopia, which is Zwift's made-up world. So on Zwift, if you're not familiar, there's plenty of other places that you can ride or run. Most of them are based on real-world places. So you can go to New York, you can go to Richmond, Virginia, where the World's Course was in 2015 when we were 4 days ago. You can go to a variety of places, London as well. But Watopia is an entirely made-up land, which means that you can have the steepest climbs, the nicest flat sections, the best scenery, whatever you want, and Zwift certainly made it like that. The Watopia Cup is being taken on today, and our team consists of Rachel Clammer, Sophie Caldwell, Lisa Perderer, Angie Olmo, and Ilaria Zane. And that is a pretty formidable team, especially all of them have very different strengths, and working together, I think we can really make a dent in this race.
Well, the big thing is the two Italians, and Angie Olmo and Ilaria Zane. They're relatively experienced at this Zwift racing. We've seen Ilaria do a lot of the events. She was fantastic in Bologna. Sophie Caldwell, I saw race 3 or 4 days ago in the Tri Cup, another race they had here on the Zwift, and she was really, really strong. So I think as a triathlon team, this is a really, really strong group, strong outfit, and I think who knows how this course is going to go, because it's as we're going to talk about, it's a bit of mountain biking with a bit of a road section. There's bike choices they have to make. The mountain bikes travel slower on the road circuit than they do the mountain bike circuit. So it's a choice of bikes. Where they position themselves is very, very important in this race. So it makes for some interesting racing. It makes for very difficult calling, but it's actually quite enjoyable to watch. And I'm keen to see how the women go. I think this course suits more of a Sophie Caldwell than it does Ilaria Zane, who was much stronger in the Bologna course with the uphill finish. But I got it wrong at that course, and I'll probably get it wrong here again. It all depends on positioning, and it all depends on how you use these gamifications that come with this Zwift racing.
Yeah, there's plenty to think about. There's power-ups. You'll see a little blue thumbs up pop up over the top of everyone's head. That's just people congratulating or pushing on the athletes who are watching alongside. There's plenty to think about. If you want to get on Zwift.com, you can go and see a little bit of the information about it. But for this race, what you need to know, it's a scratch race. So first across the line, 21.4 kilometres long. That's 2 laps of the jungle circuit, which is primarily dirt. And the only area in any of Zwift that is primarily dirt. 2 laps of this circuit, but it's got a 5.6 kilometre lead into the first lap, which is on tarmac. And the reason this is important is because, as you mentioned, Macca, the choice of bike is incredibly important. So you can unlock faster bikes and faster wheel sets, faster frames, etc., as you progress in Zwift if you're just riding along. But there's also a mountain bike option, which was introduced in October of last year. And the mountain bike is significantly faster on the dirt, but significantly slower on the tarmac. So a mountain bike, if you're pushing 300 watts in Zwift, will go around the jungle circuit at about 13 minutes and 47 seconds. But if you're on a road bike doing the same 300 watts using the same power, it's going to take you 15 minutes, which is a huge, obviously, a minute 13 difference. The road wheels are 6 to 8 kilometres an hour slower on the dirt. and then most of the circuit is dirt, but the lead-in is tarmac. So what do you do, Macca? Do you go, okay, the first 5.6 kilometres I'm going to be significantly slower, like 8 to 10%, but then I'm going to make it all up in the two circuits? Or, as we've seen, if you get gapped, it's so hard to cross back across to the front of the race. So is there going to be a subset of road riders out there who take their road bike, push as hard as they can, and try to push all the mountain bikers out the back and then just hold on?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. That's the $1 million question, Will, is do you take that road bike, set up that big gap going into the dirt section? We've seen in all the races before that closing that gap to that front group once it's established is very, very difficult to do. But knowing that you need to put out a lot more power now on that dirt section to stay ahead, it's the question we need to ask women going into this, because when I first looked at this course and when I saw that rolling resistance on those wheels, that was the first thing that popped into my head. 5.6 kilometres is a long way to go until the dirt, especially when if you can punch out really, really high power on a road bike and you get the advantage of the rolling resistance of the wheels as well, that gap could go out to 2 to 3 minutes. And regardless of whether or not you have the slower bike on the dirt, those athletes behind have to close that gap. And I've yet to see that happen in any Zwift race I've watched. Once that gap is established up the front of the road, it tends to stay away.
We're going to talk to our girls in just a second. We'll speak to Sophie Caldwell and Ilaria Zane as well, who've both got plenty of experience, at least relatively, within the Super League group. But before we do that, let's have a look back at what happened in Richmond, Virginia. Well, virtually. It actually happened in everyone's basement. 4 days ago in the Richmond Challenge. That was our second men's race that we've been involved in, and what a lineup we had as well. Alistair Brownlee, Vincent Lewis, Alex Yee, Richard Murray, Christian Blumenfeld. That is an all-star lineup. And we had three men who were right towards the pointy end, Macca, in Ali and Vince and Alex, and you can see their results, 14th, 16th and 19th. Alistair Brownlee pushing out a normalised power of 402 watts, Vince at 400, and Alex Yee, so he didn't push out the watts, but the watts per kilo were right up there at 5.9, and that's why he spent so much time at the front as well, because he was lighter, and we know that Ilaria Zane is the same. A lighter athlete really does well on Zwift. But how good was that race, and good to see us pick up some great results.
And it was good to see us all over the field. You know, I think in the first race we called, we saw Alistair on the front for a little bit early in the race, and then he sort of disappeared. But in this race, they were right up the front. They seemed to be working a lot better together. We spoke to Vincent going into the event. He'd already had a conversation with Alistair. We asked who was going to be the leader on the road, and Alistair seemed to take up that position. And Alex Yee, who is known for his running prowess, he's probably the greatest runner to ever come across the triathlon. I know the great Sebastian Coe, the head of the IAAF, has been trying to keep Alex Yee in running. He showed that his ability on a bike is remarkable. His power to weight ratio is right there. And I thought those three in particular did an amazing job. We spoke to Christian Blumenfeld going into that. He was very, very strong early. I think he got caught out a little bit in that racing, but to be honest, I thought Alistair's step up from race one to this race was amazing, and Vincent just followed him, and they protected Alex Yee a lot. I was surprised that Richard Murray got caught so far back in the group and wasn't able to move through, but those three athletes in particular had a magnificent day and set the team up. We didn't score any points on the journey, but that bunch sprint to the end was marvellous to see three triathletes in the mix.
Yeah, I mean, like this is a scratch race coming up in the women's, but that race in Richmond had 4 intermediate point scoring opportunities with 2 King of the Mountain and 2 sprints on each lap. And triathletes are not going to be able to put down 600 watts for 25 seconds the way that a cyclist can. But having us there at the end and pick up 9th overall out of 20 teams, that's not bad for a team that was only put together a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's the big thing, putting the team together so late. A lot of these teams we're seeing in this Zwift racing are established gaming teams. They're professional cyclists in their own right, but they're spending a lot of time, riding and racing on this Zwift. Remember, our athletes are swimming and running in their spare time as well. So, going in, we said Alistair needed to step up and really lead this team. He had such a great group of athletes that were looking for some leadership from someone like Alistair, who is so experienced. He's such a great strategic thinker in a race like this. They weren't involved in those sprints, as you said. I think they were just caught out with the change in pace. But you see at the end of the race, when that consistency and that triathlon strength comes through, all three of those athletes were right there. And to set the team up in 9th place overall amongst the best teams in the world, I think there's only upwards to go for these guys. I think the more we race, the better we're going to be. And I don't see it being too long before we see a triathlete, or one of our Super League triathletes, winning one of these events. I know Lionel Sanders, the great Ironman athlete, is creating a lot of stir by dominating a lot of these races on Zwift. But I do believe that Ali Brownlee or Vincent Louis or even a Richard Murray in the right conditions, or an Alex Yee can win one of these bunch sprints in the right conditions.
It's time now to welcome one of our superstars who's about to take on the Watopia Cup. It's going to be a really interesting one. Leading the way is Sophie Caldwell, normally our blue jersey holder in Super League Triathlon. Of course, that means nothing now because no one can get into the water. Soph, welcome. I know you're in the middle of your warm-up. We won't keep you long, but are you ready for another Zwift race? Your first race of the year was a Zwift race, and now another one.
Yeah, I'm really excited, actually. Never thought I'd be an e-Zwifter, but yeah, enjoying the e-racing. It's something really motivational at the moment. So yeah, excited to crack on again today.
And that tri race, Zwift race you did last week, Soph, you were 1 second behind Flora Duffy. What did you learn from that you're going to bring into this week's race?
Oh, it was actually really interesting to kind of do. I'm glad I did that before today, because it goes off hard, and I obviously everyone's been said about how hard it goes off, but it went off even harder than I expected. So expecting that again to step up. Kind of used my power ups quite well, I think. I was tactful on which ones I kept and which ones I got rid of. And yeah, I've definitely checked the course out as well. So I feel like I kind of have a bit of an idea of where, I kind of starts to climb up a bit, and then how far they ask the power ups and things like that. So yeah, I feel like I've got a bit of knowledge for today.
There's a big question on this one, Soph, in terms of whether people are going to use the mountain bike or not, because the mountain bike we discussed earlier in the show is just that little bit faster on the dirt, but there is a 5 or 6 kilometre lead in on the tarmac. So what's your choice going to be?
I think I'm going to go for the mountain bike, because I think when the race really hots up, you obviously want to be, you want to be in it with the right bike. But yeah, it's completely different situations that you just kind of choose your bike and off you go, whereas this you've actually got to think about it. So we've had some group discussions and stuff, so hopefully we'll all have picked the right one.
So when you say you've had group discussions, you've spoken with the other girls, are you all using the mountain bike? Because we had a bit of an argument over whether the mountain bike would be the best choice, or whether you could actually swap out bikes when you moved across to that road section. But are all the girls using the mountain bike?
I'm not sure about everyone. I think the decision was left to us ultimately, but it was definitely kind of hinted at that mountain bike would be a better decision. So I'm confident that most people would have chosen that.
Okay. So we've been obviously beaming ourselves into everyone's living room or wherever they are when they've been doing these races, and we've seen Georgia Taylor Brown look like she was in some kind of murderer's dungeon underneath her house, and Taylor Spivey was almost looked like a hospital room. It was so white in Portugal. But your pain cave setup's pretty schmick. I've seen it on Instagram. You must be spending a lot of time in there, and it looks like you've got a really good setup, because both you and your partner would be using it a lot.
Yeah, we were very fortunate actually. We actually moved house at the back end of last year, and there was a games room on the back of the house. And I mean, the guy was mortified. We were like, oh, this would be really cool to turn into a gym. But thankfully, literally changed that over 2 weeks before lockdown. So yeah, have a room with all gym stuff, treadmills, bike set up, lots of fans, because I guess it's warm doing Zwift. So yeah, really fortunate to have this literally on the back of our house. So yeah, it's definitely worth its weight in gold at the moment.
And I guess most of the time we're training indoors, or athletes are training indoors, preparing for outdoor racing. With all the time you've been spending in your pain cave, do you think there will be a strong correlation to being a lot stronger on the road when you do actually get back out there?
I hope so. I mean, I get a bit carried away on Zwift. A few of my longer rides have been a bit harder than they would be on the road. So hopefully through getting a bit carried away and riding a few too many races in the week, it should correlate over, but definitely have to do some bike handling skills before we race again.
It's interesting that you say that, because on Zwift it's completely different environment to going outside. You get all of your wattage and everything feedback to you. So it's the same for me. When I go for a ride, I'm going to stay in this zone, and then suddenly I think, oh, I could probably do a how different is it for people who are used to riding outside? I mean, the gamification of it, the instant feedback of all your information, but also the power-ups and the way you have to draft in the pack. It's a completely different experience, and we've seen people get on the wrong side of that, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, normally when we're training, there's a group of 5-6 girls that train out of Loughborough, and we're very much like long rides are nice and easy, and commit where we need to commit. Whereas I suppose on Zwift, like, you can find group rides to do every 20 minutes, and I think you then get a bit caught up in wanting to finish top 100, top half of that, and then you just kind of start nudging up, how hard you ride. And then all of a sudden there's a sprint, and you're like, oh, I might as well try and get a green jersey because why not? So I end up, putting those little efforts in through the week, which on one hand you've got to be careful with because it all adds up, and on the other hand, it's great because it's keeping me motivated and doing some quality stuff on the bike.
Well, look, we'll let you get to the race, but before you go, it's so difficult for us to call this event because we're always looking for where the athletes are in the race. Make it easy for us. What's your plans going in? How are you going to attack it? Where do we look for you? Will you be on the front? Will you be sitting pretty? How's this going to go for you, and what should we expect?
Well, I'm going to go out pretty hard because I think if I want to stay in that front group, you've just got to commit from the beginning. So I'm going to do that, but I don't want to burn all my matches, like within 5 minutes because then, I'm going to blow up for the end. Just going to try and, commit to that front pack, but I don't want to be on the front at all, really, because if I'm going to stay until the finish, I need to save as much energy as I can. So would like to be at the front group for the finish, but we'll see if I can hold on for the whole 2 laps.
All right, so the plan is then to go as fast as you can, but also expend no energy.
Fast I can for the first couple of minutes, settle in, don't see me, but don't get drunk.
and then storm on your mountain bike into the finish at 60 k's an hour. Easy, sounds easy enough. Thanks, Soph. Enjoy the next couple of hours on your mountain bike out there on the tarmac. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Sophie Caldwell ready to go in this one. She says it's warm. She's got 3 fans, but she's in Britain, so I don't really understand how warm it can possibly be in Britain. But there you go. Macca, obviously, we see her usually being very strong in the swim, but if you cast your mind back to, I think, Jersey 2017, she was so strong on the bike, and when she gets into the zone, Sophie can be a real threat.
Well, she's a front racer in triathlon, so her swim's a big strength, but her bike's a massive strength, and I think this eSports type foundation, this sort of racing where she has to go out of the blocks very, very hard, push hard from the front, is something she's used to doing race-wise anyway. And we saw that in the event she did last week where she was beaten by that much by Flora Duffy, who's considered one of the best bike riders in the sport. So I expect her to do really, really well. She's strong, she's always positive, and this is exactly the type of race that'll suit her.
You say eSports like a 70-year-old man trying to work out what Twitter is.
It's the I didn't even know what eSports until I realised it stood for electronic sports. I'm like, what is eSports? I got someone playing the Atari. Yeah, you didn't even know.
Surely we get someone else. We should get someone else. Or someone younger.
I used to get told to go outside as a kid. Now athletes are getting told to stay indoors and race. It's a completely different world. I never thought I'd see it, but here we are, and it's actually been quite enjoyable in this lockdown period to be able to see the athletes compete has been enjoyable.
On that YouTube or the Facebook
or whatever. On that internet thing, on the eSports internet.
All right. Thing. Let's go to someone who's got slightly more idea about how all this all works. In fact, one in terms of the Super League athletes last time around the Trofeo Bologna. Ilaria Zane joins us from Italy right now, where she is all smiles and ready to take on this course once again. Ilaria, what a result last time. You must have plenty of confidence coming out of that, 26th in the end. And can I just say, before the race, I asked Macca for his predictions, and he predicted someone else, and I said Ilaria Zane will be number 1, and you were, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for believing me. Well,
I did.
Was all-out race from the first seconds to the very last second, and I took it quite seriously. I try to build the motivation during the day. I warm up as it was a real big race, and I give it all. This actually was a surprise because I wasn't expecting to push that much, because there was my coach looking at the power after the race saying you were quite above your normal threshold and your normal numbers. So everybody was surprised by that. So yeah, I'm happy, and this will be a completely different race though.
And this eSports racing, this Zwift racing, is very, very different to the real world, right? What did you learn from that's very different between that and the real world, and what are you going to take into this week's race that you learned from the race in Bologna?
Well, what is completely different from reality is that there's no the physical person that you need to pass when you normally are on the riding and there are people in front of you. You have to go around them, and or if they want to pass you, they just go around you. So there's time, and you feel that people is changing the pace. But in esports, you just need to keep an eye on the watts per kilo during the race and see people where is, and you can't just look back. You need to have a look on the screen. So it's quite well, you have to be involved 100%, even with your mind. You can't just think about pushing hard. And what I learned from last time is that there is no way to save power. Like, I would like to say, just sit behind, and when you can move forward, you just need to be like consistent with power. And I will learn for sure something else next time.
On the Bologna course, it was 5 or so kilometres of flat, and then it was basically straight up a cliff for 2 kilometres, and that's where you really shone, because you're one of the lighter athletes, and your watts per kilogram was right up there, and that's one of the metrics that Zwift really values. Now, this course is a little bit different. It's basically the loop part is a 3 or 4% gradient up to the top where there's the drawbridge, and then 3 or 4% down for one lap. So it's not that 12 to 16% gradient. Does that not suit you as well in this one, and what are you expecting in terms of how the race will unfold?
So I actually tested myself yesterday, and I took a mountain bike. So this will be also my first time riding a mountain bike, because I never had a mountain bike, and I will be in my first race, and so it will be fun as well. And I think that would be more even power for the entire race, because last time was the first part very hard, then the climb was even harder, but then there was the descent and the flat part that was kind of rest and the recovery part. I think this time would be maybe less peak of powers, but would be more an even hard race. Like, even on the downhill, it's really important to push, so it's going to be really hard.
All right, we asked this of Sophie, and I'm going to ask it of you, and it'll probably be the last question. But for us, calling this event is very, very difficult, because it's just a bunch of icons on a screen, and we're always looking at the side like you are to see where the athletes are placed. Do you have any strategy going in? Are you going to be up near the front from the start, or are you going to position yourself in the middle of the field? What is your strategy going in to make our job a lot easier spotting you?
Well, I honestly, because I really wanted to do it last time, but I knew that last time the critical part of the race were the first part until the top of the climb. This time I will try to sit as much as I can in the front group, like in the middle of the front group. And I've been studying a lot of Zwift Insiders, so hopefully it will work something.
I like how seriously you've been taking this. You've been you've been studying different things. You've been reading Zwift Insider. That's next level stuff. You're very serious about this, and I like it.
I am, because I'm like, at the moment is the only motivation I can keep, like a Zwift race and or this event or with other event. I think that in this moment that is critical for us to keep like something in mind, to keep us motivated to train, to have fun, and not thinking about when will be the next triathlon. Because if I think about that right now, it will be quite depressing.
I don't think you could ever be depressed. That smile is just, it's too wide. So thank you so much for joining us. Maybe we'll catch up with you after the race and it'll be a different story. But right now you look fresh and firing. Best of luck, Ilaria.
Thank you.
Good luck. Have a good race.
All right.
Thanks.
Ilaria Zane looking incredibly composed there at the moment. We'll find out exactly what it's like at the other end of this one. It's going to be a tough one, Macca. As you said, it's going to be a lot different. But what we've learned over these races, and it'll be the same in this one, no matter whether people are on mountain bikes or not, or any number of the different variables on this one. But you've got to be at the front of the pack. If you get lost or you get gapped, it's impossible to find your way back. And that's why we did so well in the men's race and ended up 9th overall, is that we stayed, or at least 3 of our men stayed at the front and were able to control, or at least stay in control of where they were. And we need to do that again here.
Yeah, well, look how far we've come since the first race we've called. Like, I think when we spoke to the athletes 3 weeks ago and they're competing in their first Zwift race, it was a little bit of the unknown. Now they've learnt very, very quickly. They've realised that being isolated and not being near the front is suicide in an event like this, and staying up in that middle of that front group, whilst it's easy to say before the race, is much more difficult. And it was interesting to hear Ilaria say, and we heard Alistair say the same thing, that monitoring consistent power is the key, not spiking your power. So, yeah, the entire working as a team thing is difficult. The men did it quite well over the course in Richmond, but I think in this course this weekend for the women, it's going to be a lot harder. The mountain bike going to play a difficult element. And for someone like Ilaria, I think following someone like Sophie, who's a lot stronger and a lot more powerful, it's not the Bologna course. She doesn't have that big climb at the end, could pay dividends for all the triathletes here.
Scratch race, this one, of course, as we've already mentioned, as opposed to a team points race or anything Kings or Queens of the Mountain or sprints, which obviously triathletes are not, renowned for being able to put out 14 watts a kilo over 20 seconds. Does that play into our hands a little bit more because we did so well over the end of the race in Richmond, and now it's a scratch race, so that's all on the line at the finish line?
Well, I think it does. I think the triathlete's psyche is to go from the front and be up near the front. They're used to even, consistent power. That's the big difference between a triathlete as opposed to a cyclist who has a much better ability to shift their power up and down to go with moves. But I'm thinking this Zwift racing, the more of it I'm watching, the stronger and more consistent the power athlete is, the better they tend to go. And I think our only discrepancy in the past has been our rookiness in this style of racing. But these athletes are consummate pros. They're learning very, very rapidly. We saw that on the men's side in the Richmond course. Compared to the last race they did, they were night and day better. And I just think the same is going to happen with the women. I think as athletes, they have all the artillery to be very, very competitive and right near the front. And it's just a matter of tweaking those little things that are needed to be successful at this racing. And we're going to see a podium performance by one of our women.
Let's hope so. All 5 of them have plenty of Zwift racing experience, or at least enough to know exactly what they need to do. It is time now for the Watopia Cup. In the Super League Triathlon team, Rachel Klammer, Sophie Caldwell, Ilaria Zane, Angie Olmo, and who's the other one? Lisa Perderer. It's going to be a fantastic race. And we hand over now to OJ Borg. Thanks very much, Macca, for your input. You can go back to bed. How good for you. And we'll get on with it. It's time for OJ Borg and the Watopia Cup on Zwift.
Hello and welcome to Zwift Live. I'm OJ Borg here in my pain cave, which, if it's anything like yours over the past month or so of the lockdown, has been the home of some sweating and some swearing, because you sometimes can't help it. You're on a climb, you're in a sprint, you let out a fruity word. My only problem is that my pain cave is next to my kitchen and I keep getting told off for swearing where the kids can hear. Now, we are here today for the penultimate race of our Classics series. It has been 6 unique races, or at least it will be when it's finished. Today, we're going for 5 of 6. Very different courses today. I'm very excited about it. But first, let's take a look back at Friday. The men took on the Richmond Challenge, which was, as we thought it might be, a strategic mind bender of a team race, all about points and power-ups and where and when you go. Fabulous to watch, really, really interesting. And remember, you can always watch those races back via the YouTube channel or the Facebook. Today, like a lycra-clad version of Jumanji, we're heading to the jungle, the jungles of Watopia. And this one is going to be a scratch race, classic scratch race, on 2 laps of the jungle circuit for the elite women. And when we say scratch race, first past the post, winner takes it all. That's what it's about. And it being on the dirt roads of Watopia, bike choice is going to prove crucial. We've seen it before. Do you take a mountain bike or do you take a gravel bike? Do you need the lightness? Do you need the sprinting? How will it work? That is what's going to show the real differences in tactics when it comes up for it. It is a great route. And even though I'm a roadie at heart, check out the bike, racing on those roads with the big old rope bridge and everything else, I think is just a fascinating thing to do. Although it did really mess with my OCD, riding a road bike on the turbo and being on a mountain bike on the game. Freaked me out. Anyway, as we say, similar to the Tour of Watopia format, the winner is whoever is first past the post. And if you want to take on these races, you can do. It's all about you taking one as well. Soon as we're finished here, every hour there'll be a chance for you to race on this course, but just for 4 days until the next Classics Challenge is revealed. Now, whilst the women warm up, let's catch up with an impressive new addition to the women's Zwift scene. That is Olympian and South African national road race champion Ashley Moolman-Pasio. She romped to a massive victory, decisive victory last week in her first ever Zwift race to become the first current World Tour rider to win a Zwift Classic. Danny Rowe, who she rides for, caught up with her to find out a little more about this Zwift star in the making.
The race format today is a pretty straightforward one. It's on the Bologna TT circuit. Already, Ashley Moolman-Pasio is making an impression on this race. Look at that, 300 watts she's holding.
We've got Ash here. Thanks so much for joining me, Ash. Congratulations from me, because you obviously got Rowan King their first win on Zwift last week. How was the race?
I must say, I absolutely loved it. Of course, it was hard. There was some suffering involved, but it was really fun. Like, I think I'm still like on a bit of a high from the Zwift race, to be honest.
Ashley Moolman-Pasio's coming to the front. She's producing nearly 6 watts per kilo. We know that is a hell of a lot of power. It's been a bit of a blessing in disguise to have Zwift as a platform to keep motivated, not just to train, but for racing as well.
I was a typical road pro, you know. Why should I train on an indoor trainer if I have the beautiful roads of Girona surrounding me? And I must say, I'm totally converted now.
It will be a big eye-opener for a lot of pros out there in terms of how they can really use it to their advantage.
In terms of the race at the Madonna di San Luca, I've raced it in real life, and then to race it now on Zwift, and I must say it's incredible, the comparison. Like, they do it spot on. And so in Monday's race, when I attacked on that final sort of switchback corner where it's really steep, that's where I really attacked in real life. So yeah, it's really cool.
But great riding by Elliot here as Moolman-Pasio, the multiple time trial champion and road champion of South Africa, moving to the front, and the group now starting to fracture.
Having attacked in real life and in that really steep corner, I knew it was a good place to go.
There's the South African flag, and this is Ashley Moolman-Pasio. She's moving clear. 420 metres to go for the South African. It looks as if it's going to be a victory for Ashley Moolman-Pasio. She takes the win here in the Trofeo Bologna. What a dominant performance.
You know, e-racing is almost a new discipline, and I respect the fact that there are people racing on Zwift that have been doing it for quite a long time now. So I'm a novice, you know, and I even lining up on the virtual start line, I got onto the message, you know, the chat platform, and I was like, hi everyone, I'm really nervous. It was really great to have the other girls sort of, you know, talking and you know, giving some boost, like, oh, come on Ash, you'll be fine. But for this race, I felt like a total newbie, a new kid on the block. And so it's like that excitement like translated even after the race, you know, like a kid winning their first race. It's just opened up a whole new world to me. And now beyond the lockdown, I'm not going to stop.
Well, thanks so much for joining me, Ash, and I'll probably see you out there on Zwift soon.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. It was cool to chat.
Fascinating chat there between Ashley and Danny Rowe, who, of course, Ashley rides for, and she rides for Rowe and King. Right, let's talk about today's race and the race format. It is all about a classic scratch race. Quite simply, whoever gets across the finish line first, they shall be crowned the winner. On what sort of course? Matt Stevens has today's course preview.
For the first time, the Zwift Classics are heading to the Watopian jungle. Going through the loop around the Mayan ruins and the waterfall, riders will recognise the paths used for stage 4 of the Tour of Watopia. Selecting the right gear will be critical for this race with its tricky surface. Mountain bike or gravel bike, each team will have their own strategy. The jungle hides many surprises, but the racers probably won't have too much time to admire the magnificent Quetzal or even to high-five the friendly sloth. The climb from the cavern to the bridge will prove brutal for many riders, and it'll be hard work to keep the pack together on this challenging, undulating circuit.
Thank you very much to Matt Stevens there. He'll be back in just a second to take over on commentary duties. But just a word from me. If you've not raced on the dirt roads yet, I really do recommend it. I was very much I was nonplussed about it when I first saw the dirt roads. I tried it out. Possibly, for me, my favourite circuit. So today's race is going to be an absolute winner. Look forward to it kicking off, which is about to. So let's hand over to Matt and his co-host Danny with a quick look at the teams and the riders to watch before we jump right into that Zwift action.
Certainly looking forward to commentating alongside Danny Rowe today. But there are 23 teams in today's race, including 2 in real life sports. It's the Canyon SRAM team and the Valcar Travel and Service team. We've got an all-star team, a Triathlon Zwift all-star team, as well as 2 national teams in the form of Great Britain and the United States of America. And I tell you what, Danny, I mean, it is a superb lineup of squads we've got tonight.
It is an absolute stellar lineup. I think actually probably the best lineup we've had so far, with some absolutely fantastic teams. All of the teams seem to be putting their top riders in for this last round, and I'm super excited. I think there are going to be fireworks. It's really hard to predict this race, so it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I think some of the teams in terms of real depth, you've got to look at Hino Racing in the red bet, featuring Louise Huback, Vicky Whitelaw and Cecilia Hansen. But and I think another team, without a shadow of a doubt, that we need to look to as well, Team Vision and the United States national team. We'll pick out a few of those riders a little bit later on. But when I was going through the listing earlier on, looking at the US national team, it is packed with depth. All riders, in fact, from the Rally Pro cycling team. And what other squad for you, Danny, catches your eye? Apart, of course, from your own one, Rowe and King.
Of course, Rowe and King. And yeah, like you said, the USA national team are going to be ones to watch for sure, especially with Megan Gastrab in as well, the junior world champion from 2019. So they're definitely ones to watch. Also for me, Canyon SRAM, the professional team. They've got some new riders in this week with Cassia Newdonna and Hannah Barnes, and they will be guided, I'm sure, by Ella Harris and Tanya Erath, who we know always race on Zwift.
Indeed, we'll hear our 6 particular riders to watch that we've drawn out from this wonderful lineup. First up from Canyon ZCC, former Zwift German champion Eva Bulcholz. Now, she is a classy bike rider indeed. She actually won the Zwift Classic in Richmond back in 2019, a real force. Yeah, we also have Lou Bates from Race 3R. She's actually my pick tonight. She's been second in both Bologna and the Yorkshire circuit, so she's definitely on fine form. Now, next up from Rowe and King, the guest rider for Danny's team there, who we heard about earlier on, Ashley Moolman-Passier, who actually blitzed the field last week in Bologna, averaging 5 watts a kilo. But will this be the circuit for her tonight? Only time will tell. Hopefully. We have Shani Berger from Team Fearless. Again, the Israeli rider is on great form. She's had 2 top 10s, yet to be on the podium. She had a 4th and a 9th, so hopefully she can get one better tonight and podium. Indeed, she is definitely in good form. And penultimately from the USA national team, we've already mentioned her, but we're going to mention her again because it is the current junior world road race champion. That's Megan Gastrab, still only 18 years of age, and of course won that title back in Yorkshire last year.
And the last rider to watch tonight is Lizzie Duncan from Team Vision. She's an Ironman specialist, but she's got great form. She was 5th in Yorkshire and 8th in Bologna. She's super consistent, and again, one that's definitely going to be going for a podium in this last race tonight.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most fascinating things across both men's and women's events is the fact that we've got a lot of athletes who are coming in and dominating and really performing well. And here are the all-important power-ups. Well, there's the aero one at the top. That's the one everybody wants in a sprint. That makes you more aero for 15 seconds. Next one is the draft. That's the van there. That increases the draft effects. That doubles it effectively by 50% for 30 seconds, or should I say adds it by half. The breakaway burrito makes you undraftable for 10 seconds, so good if you're trying to attack and break clear on your own. Lightweight, well, that makes you 9 kilograms lighter for 15 seconds. And finally, the invisibility one, my favorite power-up, makes you invisible for 10 seconds. So really important, well, not really important, if you want to stealth breakaway without anybody knowing, that is the one to use. And now, today's course, as was mentioned earlier on by OJ, 21.4 kilometres, which equates to 13.3 miles, taking in 2 laps of the jungle circuit. They're just on the run into the circuit now. But as you'll notice, this is a very, very different circuit indeed. The entire race, apart from the rope bridge, which is boards, which is bits of wood, it is all on gravel. And that's why, Danny, we're seeing these riders either choosing gravel bikes or the vast majority have actually picked mountain bikes.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating actually to see now what the riders have picked. And I think if anyone isn't on a mountain bike or a gravel bike, they clearly haven't done their research, because we know that these are the best bikes to have. There's a lot of different pros and cons to either the mountain bike or the gravel bike, but we know that they're for sure better than a road bike on this terrain, as we see in races like Strade Bianche on the road, or essentially mountain bike races. You wouldn't ride a road bike in a mountain bike race, and with this terrain tonight, we shouldn't be seeing any road bikes.
Yeah, I've not seen any at all. We were watching earlier on as the riders were warming up, the all-important warm-up on the Zwift. In the pens, I couldn't spot any road bikes at all. I did spot a couple of gravel bikes, but looking at the bikes that most people have gone for, they know what they're doing. I mean, I would have been very surprised and if anybody had turned up on a road bike. But this particular course has been engineered in-game to make it feel like the rolling resistance of riding on gravel, hence the choice of bike. Now, the mountain bikes themselves in-game are a little bit lighter than a gravel bike, but a gravel bike will give you that little bit more rigidity when you want to accelerate for a sprint, for example. So it's all about horses for courses, as we look at Ashley Moolman-Pasio, of course, dominated the other day. But what do you think about today's course? It's not exactly a pure climbers course. One more for the puncheurs, maybe even the sprinters, if they can get over this big climb that they've got to face twice.
Yeah, exactly like you say. It's only 175 metres elevation in the whole course, and that's actually the least we've seen across these Zwift Classics. So like you say, I think if the more pure sprinters can get over these climbs, then it'll be one for them tonight. I don't think it will finish in a solo performance like we saw with Ash in the last race in Bologna. I think it will be a whittled down small group bunch sprint. So it's one that the sprinters are going to really have to hang on for over the climbs. But we're already seeing such a savage start. We just saw Ashley's numbers there. Her heart rate was already up to 180 beats per minute. And we know that this is a key component of Zwift racing. You have to be warmed up properly. We're telling all our riders to have a really, really thorough warm up. A lot more than you probably would in a normal, in real life road race where it doesn't start so fast.
Yeah, you're perfectly right. I mean, a lot of the riders, when we came on and saw the riders in the pen, 20 minutes, half an hour beforehand, and many of these riders may have actually been on Zwift earlier on today as well, to do a little ride, maybe get a bit of an hour in the legs, maybe do a couple of efforts ahead of this evening's event. But again, it is worth mentioning that, of course, the Zwift community is from all over the world. We're looking at Shayna Powless. We know she's riding over in the United States, and there's one particular Australian rider who I understand, we're talking about it before, Danny, that it's actually 2:40 or 3 o'clock in the morning right now.
Yeah, we have a rider riding for us from Rowan King, and it is 3:40 in the morning. So she had to get up super, super early. She absolutely loves riding these races on Zwift, so we'll have to look out for her tonight. But yeah, she's certainly getting up. Probably the earliest I've ever gotten up for a road race would be about 5 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, that really, really is the middle of the night.
It certainly is. Well, this is Rachel Elliott just moving up into the front. Caldwell, Gill, Cotter also there as well. Just coming out of this beautiful cavern. This is coming into the finish line. We'll go through the finish line for the very first time. Then they will face 2 more laps. Each circuit is smidge under 8k, 7.9 kilometres. And there, for the very first time, is the finishing banner. There's the waterfall to the left-hand side. It really is quite dramatic. A bit later on, we'll be going through the Mayan ruins. This is one of my favourite circuits. But we've both ridden this, haven't we, Dan? And it is definitely grippier. You'd need to ride the bike for the sort of course. So although they might be putting out 4 or 5 watts a kilo, they'll be moving at a couple of kilometres an hour slower for the same effort on the road, won't they?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, like you said, we've both ridden this course ourselves, and it is really tough. It definitely makes it harder being on a mountain bike. In terms of your speed, it is slower, so it might make the race that bit longer, which riders will have to take into consideration. And we're seeing the same riders at the front. Lizzie Duncan here, who I was speaking about before, from Team Vision. She's been top 10 in both races, so consistent. And Rachel Elliott. These riders know how to race on Zwift. Positioning is key, and I think even more so for a course like this, where the terrain is constantly changing, and not just the terrain, the altitude. So we have, ups and downs throughout the race. You can see Leah Thorvaldsen here. She's up at over 300 watts, and for Leah, who's actually a smaller rider, more of your climber, it's such high powers just to be in that top 10 of this peloton.
Indeed, and Iona Johnson is just up there as well, putting out 7 watts a kilogram. I don't think that's necessarily an attack, it's maybe just moving up. Several riders there. As you just look at Hamilton now from the Bolt Racing team, just moving off the front. She's got a slender lead of a second. I think that's a bit of a tentative move, maybe trying to get a little breakaway, or maybe just trying to get herself in a nice position. And you could just see she's actually a rider on a gravel bike, so the gravel bike will give her a little bit of an advantage on the climb. It's just elsewhere it won't. So she was on a bike that's a little bit lighter, and maybe she's actually, the effort of going up the climb is just a little bit easier. I think she's one of the few riders, interestingly, Danny, that is actually gone for the gravel bike. You can just see the double handlebar setup here on the cockpit. I think that's a Canyon gravel bike, if I'm correct. But I think that's why she's moved off the front, because the effort is just a little bit easier.
That's really interesting, yeah, but it does look like she's doing over 4 watts per kilo, so she is trying hard right now. But again, like you say, she's going to have to use being on her gravel bike to her advantage and really go for it on these types of terrain. But what I can see is really interesting here. I've got Zwift Power up in front of me. I can see there's so many splits in the peloton, and actually a rider like Hannah Barnes has been dropped out of this group. She's over a minute behind now. Also, a couple of riders from the USA national team, Katie Hall is one of them that has also been dropped, and we know with these 2 riders that they don't race on Zwift very often. And like we've said before, time and time again, you have to know how to race on Zwift. It's more than just brute power. It's about tactics. It's about knowing where to be and how you can use your power to your advantage.
No, it certainly is, and it's also, you need to get used to riding Zwift. As we look at Val Peterson, one of those aforementioned riders that is unfortunately being detached, just dropping the power down a little bit.
Hello everyone, just a quick update on what's happening here in terms of Super League. Well, just above me, Ilaria Zane has frozen. She is still moving in real life, and I'll give you an update on where everybody is. Super fast start to this race. There are a few people out there on gravel bikes. The bulk are on mountain bikes, as we talked about, and they have been punching it at the front of this race. The group has broken up significantly. You can check all the splits on zwiftpower.com, by the way, if you want to, and I'll have an update right now on what's happening. We've lost one of our races, Ilaria Zane, unfortunately, and as you can see, Sophie Caldwell above me with her boyfriend Tom looking on and taking photos as well. Ilaria is now a minute 13 back, but she's been pushing 4.7 watts a kilo. Unfortunately, she's only 46 kilos. So that great climb in Bologna that really suited her as she went so well and ended up finishing 26th. It's a lot different here on the gravel and a little bit flatter, about 2 or 3% gradient on the jungle circuit. But Angelica Olmo, Sophie Caldwell, Rachel Clammer, Lisa Purder are all doing pretty well, especially Angie Olmo, who's been off the front at the moment. She's in the top 10. Sophie, Rachel and Lisa are in a big group 15 seconds back at this point, and they're all pushing between 4.8 and 4.9 watts a kilo, which for someone like Sophie Caldwell is about nearly 300 watts. So super quick start to this one. Our women are at the front, with the exception of Ilaria, who's dropped to a minute 24 back now. The pace has been very, very hot, and I'll keep you updated on how we're all going across the course of this race, but it's all happening.
She's just got to hope that she can make it as difficult as possible and whittle things down as much as she can.
Yeah, absolutely. That really does then play into her strength. We know that she's not an out-and-out sprinter, so she needs to make this as hard as possible from the start to the finish. And I think we're going to see her trying to attack up every slight elevation that we have on this course today. And we know that it does really go up and down from the start. We've got the bridge that you've got to contend with, which is pretty steep at the top. We both found that in the race or the ride that we did on this course. So you've really got to have your wits about you and sustain your power at the front all the way over that before it then goes down.
Well, look at this shot. This is super cinematic. Every time I commentate on a race on Zwift, I did the Gravel Rush series a couple of weeks back, which was exclusively on this circuit. Look at that. It is like, let's say it again, it is like we're watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Absolutely wonderful stuff. And the field, you could see, was fragmented just a little bit there. And as you said, Danny, that nasty little kick on the other side of the rope bridge goes up to like 8 or 9% plateaus before dropping down. It's a good opportunity for the more powerful riders to try and really accelerate hard there if they can.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, you have to stay really close to the front, but not on the front on that bridge, because we know that actually when it starts going back up the bridge, it really forces a strong headwind on the top couple of riders. So you've really got to be on it in terms of positioning, be in the top 10, but not on the front, and then step on the gas as soon as it starts going up the other side. Indeed. Well, these are the group here. Mitchell Sanguinetti is there, one of the riders from the IRL team and in real life team, an exceptionally good rider. It's good to see the Valcar Travel and Service team from Italy racing regularly on Zwift. Up in the mix, they clearly know how to ride here. Good to see Sophie Caldwell as well, one of the all-star triathlete squad, making this front split. But a lot of riders in a lot of difficulty already, but still 11.3 kilometers to go. Next time they pass through the finish line, they will have one lap to go, and that's the point where they'll get the next power-up. So we saw just on the climb, riders getting rid of their power-ups to make sure they can get a fresh one next time through. And what would be the power-up that you would want, Danny, on a course like this? Is we see two distinct fissures, two big splits in the peloton here. I think the ideal power-up for this finish isn't the featherweight power-up, is it? It's going to be the aero one. Yeah, absolutely. I think any race that doesn't finish uphill, the aero power up is the best power up to have, and that basically makes you more aero for 15 seconds. You have to know when to use it though. I've been caught out a couple of times where I've tried to use it a little bit too early, and then the power up's gone, and a few riders have just hit me to the line right at the last minute. But yeah, for sure, if you get that aero power up, then I would try and hold on to it as long as possible and then hope to be able to then use it at the end. But Sophie Caldwell's doing a brilliant job here in this front group. Like you say, we're seeing some fantastic triathletes doing really, really well in these Zwift races. And I think that's because actually when it comes to real life racing, they sometimes struggle with the technicalities of a bike race. But here it is more about pure power. And we heard about that from Louise Huback in the interview that I did last week, where she just said she loves the pure power element of the game. You don't have to worry about, your descents and your technicalities of racing as such. You can just really put your head down and pedal as hard as you can.
You can. It is. There are other elements to it. Of course, there's the gamification side, but it is about laying down the power at the right time. And although these riders are, of course, racing in teams, at the moment, everybody is at their own house. We're all on lockdown, of course. Everybody's in their own form of isolation. So it is a very, very, although there's a massive community on Zwift, we had 23 teams on the start line today. Essentially, you're in your own little pain cave, aren't you? You're focused, you're on your own. It's about holding that power and then using the power-ups when you can. And of course, when you can, getting those little micro rests as well. And if you know how to use Zwift to your advantage, know when to use the draft power-up, know when to sit in the pack, know when to drift backwards. There are opportunities, of course, depending on the course, to get these little micro rests to try and recover for the big efforts to come.
Yeah, we saw that in Bologna actually. I think if you're going over about 60 kilometers an hour, you can actually free wheel and not lose your speed. So you have to be on it, because as soon as you drop them back under 60 kilometers an hour, you have to start putting the power down again. So like you said, if you know how and when to use these micro rests, that can really, really help you save that energy that you need for the last part of the race.
Well, that's we're looking at the picture-in-picture of Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio there. You know, spinning that gear, and you can just see she's got the fan on there. It's making sure she's kept as cool as possible. This is a very, very good group, and the gap is opening up. It was just a few seconds. It's at about 5 or 6 seconds. They're just going through the cavern again here. You can just see the group moving through. It's probably about 15, no more than 15 riders in that group, and they all appear to be racing together. Good to see a couple of riders from the United States national team in the mix as well. It's a real mix of riders from in real life, the Zwift community, triathletes, and the young national championship riders as well. Shackley there as well, the Scottish rider. Good to see her. She's in very, very good form at the moment. It won't be long before we pass through the banner with 1 lap to go. But this group now moving clear, but I can just see that group behind. I think, Danny, if they get their heads together, there's still an opportunity to try and get back on here.
Yeah, I think there still is an opportunity. We actually saw that it came down quite quickly before the end in the Bologna race. So it really depends on this front group and how well they ride together towards the finish. They could start looking at each other, but they need to really work together to ensure that the group behind doesn't come back, because that's not what they want. At the moment, they can really, really focus on their own powers. They're not really going to be drifting too far back in a small group like this. You can see Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio again coming to the front here as the road starts to go upwards. And like you say, Rachel Elliott is always there or thereabouts at the front. I can actually see that group behind. They're in their sights. They're going to be so motivated to get back to this group now.
Well, it's certainly flown. Rachel Elliott, I mean, one of the most, I think the rider that I think can suffer the most. Some of the picture-in-picture images we had of Rachel Elliott for the last 2 races, as we flick across to Sophie Caldwell from the triathlon team. She's in this lead group. It's just passing through that cavern again. And when we just exit this cavern, that's when the road just starts to bite. It's not a tremendously steep climb at all, fluctuates between 3 and 4%, but it's long. It's a good 5 or 6 minute effort. And this is where the riders that are good at climbing, the lighter riders, really have to try and impose themselves on the front, make it as hard as they can. But that group behind, they've still got the opportunity to get back on. But in Zwift, it's a little bit harder. Once you've lost the wheel, once the gap opens, it's so much harder to chase, or to get back on, should I say. There needs to be a real determined effort sooner rather than later to shut that gap.
Yeah, you really do need to close it down quickly, because like you say, it is a lot harder in the game than it is in real life.
How good is Sophie Caldwell doing at the front of this race? She's now whittled herself down to a group of probably about 15 or maybe even about 12 riders, and she's staying with the front group, and this pace is definitely on. She's currently sitting in 6th position, but you can see there plenty of time off the front, and Sophie Caldwell now holds the hopes of our Super League triathlon team. There is no doubt about that. She's been holding about 4.8 watts a kilo across the course of the last 15 kilometres. A superhuman effort, averaging 284 watts. If we look further back in the field, Angie Olmo is back in 46th position, 33 seconds back. Rachel Klammer and Lisa Perderer are part of a group about 600 metres back on the road in 58th and 63rd position, respectively. And Ilaria Zane, we'll have to get to her after the race and see whether she had some technical issues or what happened at the start. She's now 2 minutes and 39 seconds back, but she was a minute 20 back within the first few kilometres. So she might have had some technical problems there at the beginning. It was a very, very fast start. But Sophie Caldwell is on the front of this race and holds the hopes of the Super League triathlon team. She is, we just saw her up on screen there, pushing really hard, but looking very composed. She's got an Instagram live of her own going on at the moment, and she looks pretty composed there in Loughborough. So we will keep you updated, but with 1 lap to go, Sophie Caldwell is right up there near the front.
We've got a growing pin group, and this was her tactic from the start, and it was almost a case of that she knew that she wouldn't be able to then potentially win in a sprint if she made it this hard. And these riders have been able to hold on to her wheel, so they're going to be breathing a sigh of relief as we go down the other side of this climb.
Well, Shackley now taken to the front. A good effort there by Ashleigh Moolman-Pasio. She was up to nearly 7 watts a kilogram. just in an effort to try and split this group, but around 12 to 14 riders. Caldwell as well. She's absolutely flying, happy to take her turn at the front, and the gap has now really opened up. It's one of the most consistent riders on the Zwift platform moves to the front. Ella Harris making a little bit of a move now, and I think this is the group that's a little bit further down the climb. You can just see at the top of the screen the group in front, but I think the lead has opened up to about 10 seconds now, and I think it's going to be very difficult for this group that's just behind to now get back on terms. I think, Danny, the winner is going to come now from this front group unless they start finessing on the descent.
I totally agree, and look at this group, it's really stringing out now. So their riders are just relentless. They're putting in so much effort. Lizzie Duncan, it looks like she doesn't want it to come down to a sprint here. She's going hard on the last part of this incline of the course, and like you said, with only 5 kilometers to go, I think it's going to be too late now for that group to hop behind to get junction with this group at the front, and it seems they're all hanging on to try and get to the finish in this small group.
Well, another rider who's in there who's very, very fast at the finish. I saw Vicky Whitelaw from Hino Racing in there as well, 5th overall in the Tour of Watopia. She's got a really ferocious finish. And look at Lizzie Duncan here, a real good insight, a real good look at the kind of effort that these athletes are putting in. Absolutely on the limit, on the rivet, riding at threshold, 334 watts as we get towards the top of this climb. That's absolutely wonderful stuff.
It is, and Ash is going again. She is not giving up. She really, really wants to split this group, and you can see some riders just struggling on the back here. You can see a rider from the USA. I think that's Christabel Hickok, who I actually used to race with in the Silence team. She's a super climber. She's done really well here. I've seen on her social media that she's been racing and training on Zwift on the platform. So I love how all of these professional riders now are getting hold of Zwift, absolutely loving it, buying into it. As Ash said, she's not going to stop when the in real life racing starts again. She is hooked.
Well, I tell you, one rider that's looking good. It's a very young rider from Team Breeze, which is effectively the Great Britain junior team. And that's Anna Shackley, 12th in the Junior World Road Race Championships last year. She's got a very, very good finish. But again, Ashley Moolman-Pasio, again, the protagonist. She needs to make it as hard as she can on that nasty little drag. And again, she's opened up a little bit of a lead. But it's Cecilia Hansen, who herself has got a very, very fast finish from Team Hino, who back on her wheel, who bring back the South African. The ominous big H on the back of the red jersey of Team Hino. Looking good. We know how good they are in a finish. They're going to be licking their lips, I think.
8 watts per kilo there from Ash as Illy Gardner, her teammate, comes to the front. They are both trying to make this as hard as possible, but unfortunately for them, they haven't got the gap that they wanted. Louise Huback, we can see here, is now in the wheels, and once they're in the wheels, it's a lot easier to stay within this group. You can see that the watts per kilo will go down, and they can have a little bit of a breather before the road ramps back up again. This is super, super exciting racing. It's been absolutely attritional, and it is, by the looks of things, going to come down to this small group for the finish.
Well, your predictions were right, Danny. You know Zwift racing very, very well. We've seen enough races now. This is the sort of course that does suit a whittled down little group, and that exactly is what has happened. The pressure has been applied on the 2 ascents of this climb. We now only have 3.4 kilometers to go, but I tell you what, there's some very, very good climbers in this group, but more importantly, there's some very, very fast finishers indeed. Lou Bates can finish very, very well. Whitelaw can finish exceptionally well, and we know how Huback can finish. But the big question is, how are they going to tackle this finish? Because remember, they're on mountain bikes. The rolling resistance inbuilt into the game is slightly different, so the bikes will react in a slightly different way. They won't react to the pressure being applied, to the power being put through them quite as quickly. So I think, Danny, we could see a longer, more drawn-out sort of sprint.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I was doing my research before tonight, and I looked at Lou Bates' stats.
Quick update on where our Super League athletes are as we head towards the finish of the Watopia Cup. And in that group at the front, you can see there the pace is right on, and all the big names in Zwift racing are there. Lou Bates on screen, but Cecilia Hansen's there, Louise Huback's there, Ella Harris is there, and right amongst them is Sophie Caldwell, who is showing us that she can do the job on Zwift in a big way. Further back in the field, 50th is Angie Olmo, 56th, Lisa Perter, 58th, Rachel Clammer, all in a big group there, between a minute and a minute 30 back. And Ilaria Zane, again, 3 minutes 48 back. So we'll check in with her at the end of the race. Don't forget to tune in on Instagram Live straight after the race, where I'll be chatting about everything that happened and hopefully talking to some of our athletes as well when they recover. But right now, there is a couple of kilometres to go to the finish. The pace is right on. That group on screen right now includes Sophie Caldwell. We'll get back to your commentators.
On a gravel bike, but time will tell. And the all-important power-ups will play their part. Will it be an aero power-up? That is the one that everybody will want in a finish like this. Will it be the draft? Invisibility. Will anybody have the invisibility and use stealth at the finish? But Moolman Pasio, the winner last week in Bologna, moves to the front, perhaps in a desperate attempt to just try and ride the other riders off her wheel. But she has got a teammate with her, I think, Danny.
She has. Illy Gardner is with her from Team Rowan King. I'm wondering if they're actually chatting now and communicating in terms of what they're going to do at the finish. Are they going to work as a team? Will one rider try and lead the other out? You can see them coming together here in the blue and green colours. And that's what's another really interesting aspect of this e-racing now. It really is a team competition, even though tonight is an individual overall based competition, as is in real life racing. It's really interesting to see how they can work as a team to use it as their advantage.
Well, this group heading into the finish now, it won't be long before we go under the Flamme Rouge. Ashley Moolman Pasio there, 243 watts, hovering at just around 5.5 watts per kilo. They are now under 1 kilometre to go. Who is going to take out this race? This is race number 5. It is the Watopia Cup. It's on gravel. Unless, of course, you count the rope bridge. But Moolman Pasio now, it looks like she's in lead-out mode. Just under 800 metres to go. Moolman Pasio still on the front. Lizzie Duncan now moves on the front of the division. They're just going through the cavern now. Sanguinetti from Valcar. She's one of the few riders on a gravel bike. Moves to the front. We've got a burrito being dropped.
This is our first power-up that we've seen coming into the finish of this race. Illy Gardner from Rowan King has launched her attack early. Is she trying to help Ash with a springboard type lead out? We're going to see the riders using their power-ups now. What have they got left? Lizzie Duncan is coming to overtake Illy Gardner now in the last 300 metres of the race.
Well, 300 metres to go, and it is Lizzie Duncan, the triathlete, who drops the undraftable burrito, which made it undraftable for 10 seconds. Look at the face of Duncan, but she's been swamped. It is Sanguinetti. Ella Harris as well is there for Canyon Tram. The finish is just around the corner. 100 metres to go. Harris is on the front. It looks like the New Zealand's going to get it. A blanket finish. It looks as if it's Harris. It is Belfort, in fact, that takes the win ahead of Sanguinetti. Caldwell in third. Well, we'll get confirmation of that. It was an absolute, well, a rip-roaring sprint finish there. Power-ups being dropped left, right and centre. We're going to have to try and pick the bones out of that one, Danny. But what a spectacular race. Difficult to call. We're going to have to wait for confirmation.
Wow, that was absolutely incredible. It changed so much in the last few hundred metres, and we can see, wow, it was actually Cecilia Hansen from the Hino team that got the overall in that race.
It was indeed the Swedish rider Cecilia Hansen from Team Hino, one of the most dominant teams on Zwift. Vicky Whitelaw, her teammate. We thought it may be those two riders, but what a superbly timed sprint there from the exceptionally light Ashley Moolman Pasio. And look at her average. What is there? 5.5 watts a kilo. Lou Bates, again, so consistent in fourth place. Belfort, another Swede, up in the top 5. Caldwell there in sixth. Then we have Sanguinetti from Valcar. Great to see her in the mix. Ella Harris will have to settle for 8th after being 3rd last week. And then Louise Huback in 9th. And Gardner from your team, Danny, in 10th place. Another fantastic race and a worthy winner. One of the most consistent riders on Zwift, Cecilia Hansen.
That was absolutely brilliant. And yet, Cecilia Hansen from the Hino team, they had 1 and 2. They have to be super happy tonight with Vicky Whitelaw taking 2nd place. And again, like you say, an absolutely incredible finish there from Ashley Moolman Pasio, who has the highest average watts per kilo out of that top 10 roundup, which we knew was going to happen after she really tried to put the hammer down time and time again to split that group. So I think she'll be chuffed with that result tonight.
I think she certainly will, especially coming into the finish with riders with potentially superior power. But I think because of the nature of that sprint, it was a long, drawn-out affair. They're effectively going flat stick for about the last 400-500 metres even, but a great timed run to the line from Moolman Pasio. So 2 podiums in succession for her first 2 big races on Zwift. She's got to be happy with that. But no, another fantastic race all round and a really intriguing proposition, I think, Danny. You know, what bikes do the riders use? We've, of course, got the gamification side with the different power-ups, but I think the addition of the gravel surface, which, of course, is so popular in real life, to bring that into the game just makes it so multi-layered. It's another tactical consideration for all of these riders and teams to think about.
Yeah, it is, and I personally absolutely love it. As OJ Borg mentioned at the start of the show, he's a converted gravel bike lover, a mountain bike lover, all different terrains. It just makes it even more exciting to know and think about why the riders are choosing which bike. So if you get a chance, jump on yourself.
What a race that was. Absolutely outstanding. And we'll get an update right now on all of our riders and what happened in the end. And I'll give it to you right now. Sophie Caldwell, how about that for a result? She finished 0.4 of a second back in a sprint with all of the big names of Zwift racing. Angie Olmo finished 47th. Rachel Clammer 57th. Lisa Perder 63rd, and we're still waiting for Ilaria Zane to come in. She was nearly 5 minutes back in the end. So tough times for her, but what a result for Sophie Caldwell. In terms of the quality of the races that we saw around her in that group, her positioning was outstanding, and her pace at the end as well. We haven't seen that from a Super League athlete. Our previous best result was Alistair Brownlee 4 days ago in 14th, and now another huge step forward for Super League Triathlon in terms of finishing in the top 10. So Sophie Caldwell, a fantastic effort. We're going to catch up with her right now on Instagram Live. So head across to the Instagram and we will jump straight on Instagram Live and talk to Sophie Caldwell in the aftermath of that race. But right now, it is bye for now. Head to our Instagram, as we said, and we'll talk to you in about 2 minutes.